Welcome to the Devy to Dynasty Film Room Podcast, hosted by the Matt brothers. I could not be more excited to get this thing started. If you're watching this on YouTube and you've been following this channel for a while, you're used to seeing my face. For those that don't know me, my name's Matt Cooper. I founded and have been running the Devy to Dynasty Film Room on YouTube for about 2 years now. On this channel, I break down strengths and weaknesses for college and pro football players, specifically with the lens of Dynasty Fantasy Football, so you know which players to draft, which players to buy, which players to sell. And guys, the day has finally arrived. A lot of people have been asking me to do this for a while now, and it's finally happening. We have our own podcast. So we're going to talk more in a minute about what the show will be like and our vision for it. But first, I could not be more excited to introduce you to my friends here. You might be wondering why we're calling ourselves the Matt Brothers. Well, first of all, we're all named Matt. Thank you, Captain Obvious. And no, we are not blood relatives, but we've got a ton in common. We're all close to the same age. We've all got young kids running around. We all share the same passion for this great hobby of ours. And maybe most importantly, we all share a faith in Jesus Christ that's really central to our lives. Now, don't click away. I'm not going to be obnoxious about that. You clicked for fantasy football. That's exactly what we're going to give you. But on an introduction show, I felt like I'd be remiss not to mention that that's core to who we are as people and a lot of how we met and got connected. So that's enough of me talking. So without further ado, let's start with my man, Matt Rupert. We go way back. All right, I'm 32. I've known you since I was in college. We met through the campus ministry we were both involved with. You were in my first ever Dynasty League, and we've both been hooked ever since. I've lost count of how many leagues we're playing in together now at this point. It's a lot.
Like 8, and something like that.
How many?
I think 8. I could be wrong.
8? That's crazy. Yeah, that's a lot of leagues together. So I'm excited for the people here to get to know you. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Matt Rupert.
Yeah, super excited to be joining. This is kind of my first foray into content creating. Just been very passionate about breaking down film, and it's kind of going beyond the box score for years and years now. Friends have always come to me for advice and things like that. So I figured finally dive in and start content creating and creating a Twitter X profile. Hopefully I can help contribute
welcome to
everyone's championships.
Yeah, glad to have you, man. And you're new to this, but I can attest to everybody watching the show that Matt really knows what he's talking about. Like I said, we've been playing in leagues together for years. So tell the people, how long have you been playing fantasy football? How did you get into it, and Dynasty especially?
Yeah, I've been playing since I think 2008. When I first went off to college, just to kind of stay in touch with people from my hometown. And I basically just kept that one hometown league for probably like 4 years. And then it wasn't until I think 2014 when I got into Dynasty, and then just been hooked ever since. And then just slowly started getting rid of all my redraft leads or transferring them to Dynasty format. And then, now I got way too many leagues, and so I've been playing for a while and focusing on Dynasty and film study and trying to get
it's a natural transition, honestly, when you are into watching and studying film. Like, of course you're going to get hooked on Dynasty because then you can identify these guys early and you can get them cheap, and then you've got them on your roster forever. And so it's really natural for us film lovers to love Dynasty as well. And so I know you and I remember years and years ago playing in redraft leagues, you and I were watching like Brett Coleman breakdowns and getting really into all the strengths and weaknesses. And it definitely applies a lot more to Dynasty, I think, even than redraft. So what are some of your favorite positions to watch and scout?
I've always loved the wide receiver position, particularly looking at like route running. Like, I love to kind of get into nuances there. And I've really been digging into quarterback play in the last couple of years. So I'd say those are two of my favorites.
Okay. There you go. That's quarterback is probably the toughest one to do. So if you got quarterback in your back pocket, we're going to be in good shape here. So Mr. Matt Jackson, let's go to you. You are one of the first people I met in the fantasy industry. We not only share a name, but the same birthday, weirdly enough, and the same profession. We both work in full-time Christian ministry. We became fast friends over the last few years, and definitely have been one of my closest friends in this space. So really excited to do this show with you. And for those who are watching for the first time, Matt Jackson is going to be our main host on the show moving forward. So I'm kind of introducing just because this is my channel and people are familiar with my face, but Matt is actually going to be hosting and producing this podcast for us. So Matt, tell the people a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, it's actually kind of crazy how much stuff we have in common, isn't it? The more we sat there and talked about it, we're like, were we the same person? It was wild. Sadly, me and you aren't in as many leagues as Rupert are, but you and Rupert are, but we have started to, we co-own or co-run a commission league together. So we started to get, build those blocks a little bit. Hopefully maybe we can get down the road, have 8 leagues together. But I got into fantasy football when I was in 7th grade. My first player that I ever owned was LaDainian Tomlinson. So shout out to LT. He was a great get for my fantasy roster.
That's a good way to get you hooked right there.
Yeah, that's a great way to get you hooked. Having one of the best fantasy football players to ever play the game. But shortly got into Dynasty later when I got into college, taking that next step out of redraft, and I've loved it ever since. Now I'm into the Devy leagues, the campus to Kent leagues, and everything I can about college football is what I love doing. So that's kind of my jam. That's what I love to talk about. I eat, sleep, and breathe college football. So that's, if I offer anything, hopefully that's what I'm here for.
Yeah, that's something that you and I have in common. I know it didn't take long, me playing Dynasty, before I went down the Devy rabbit hole and playing some campus to Canton leagues myself as well, and love the college side of things. So that's something that we have in common, and something that we'll be hitting on quite a bit on this show. So Matt, what are some of your favorite positions to watch and scout?
So I always enjoyed scouting the running back position. Of course, it's always a fun position to try and scout. But, kind of like Rupert, the last few years, I found myself really gravitating towards the quarterback position. As you said, a couple of minutes ago, it's the hardest position to scout. It's the one that people miss on probably the most frequently. So that's the one that I've always found myself drawn to. If I can get that position right, then I'm going to be a whole lot better off in my Dynasty league. So that's the one I felt myself gravitated towards here the last 2, 3, 4 years.
Absolutely, man. I mean, most leagues these days are super flex, and so the quarterback's super, super valuable. Getting them right makes a huge difference. And even NFL GMs get it wrong like half the time. So if you're a fantasy player and you're hitting on quarterbacks, you're doing pretty good. So I'll share just briefly about myself. So I have been playing fantasy football redraft league since I was in like middle school. I mentioned I'm 32 years old now. So it's been a long, long time I've been playing fantasy football. And like I mentioned earlier, just been watching film breakdowns on YouTube for as long as I can remember. And really about 2 years ago, I said, what the heck? If I've been thinking about this for a long time, and I'm just going to go for it. So I taught myself video editing. I taught myself some basic graphic design. I started the YouTube channel, and have just
a heck of a job at it.
Well, thanks, man. It's been a learning process. If you go back and watch some of my first videos, I cringe a little bit, but definitely the production quality has gone up as I've learned more and more about the tech side of it, and I just love the film. So my first Dynasty league was, I guess, about 6 years ago now. It was a home league with Rupert and some other guys from college, and have been hooked on that ever since. The last few years, I've been really into Devy. And I would say my favorite positions to scout are running back and wide receiver. So I fully own that I don't know enough about coverages and the whole 9 yards to figure out quarterback play. I can tell you if he's got a strong arm and if he's mobile and all that, but as far as where his read was supposed to be and the progressions and all that, I take the L on that one. But when it comes to route running for wide receivers, vision for the running backs, looking at the blocking schemes, identifying all these traits, whether it be yards after the catch for a receiver, contact balance, elusiveness, all the different things that you're looking for running back and wide receiver, I'm pretty good at identifying and seeing when it's there and when it's not there, and the strengths and weaknesses on those positions. So I feel pretty confident there. I think my track record is pretty good at those positions, and I have a lot of fun scouting those. So All right, Matt Jackson, I mentioned you're going to be our primary host, so I'm going to pass the mic to you. Why don't you tell everyone a little bit about what the format of these shows is going to look like and get us officially into our first episode?
Yeah, so when we were coming together, me, Cooper, and Rupert, we were talking about, what do we want the format to this show to be? And one thing that we really landed on, and I think you guys can attest to as well, is we wanted to stay true to the roots of what this YouTube channel was. We wanted to be a true Devy to Dynasty fantasy football podcast. So what does that mean for this podcast here tonight? Well, that means that we won't just be talking about college football games on Saturday, but we'll be talking about the impacts that they have on the players, the stock of those players, and how that all translates to Sunday NFL football and how they all coincide with each other. It's a full and complete Devy to Dynasty football podcast. You're getting the full picture here. But as far as what does every show look like? Well, to start off every show, we're going to be talking about and breaking down college and Devy football notes. We'll be going through 1 to 2 things that stood out in the games, that week's slate of games that really jumped out to us that we feel like needs to be talked about for your sake, that you can pay attention to, that may affect stocks or may affect those different Devy players. We'll then move into stock up and stock down players. One of the things that we were really talking about with this section that I'm excited that we're going to move into is a trade block section. So one of the things that I think we all hear all the time is, well, I don't know how to trade this NFL piece for this Devy piece. How do they go back and forth? What do they correlate to? Well, that's one of those things that we're going to be hitting on in this podcast. How do you trade a Devy piece for an NFL piece? And what do those values really look like? And we'll be diving into some real life trade scenarios, trading some of those NFL and Devy pieces. We'll then, of course, dive into the NFL slate of games, talk about the stock changes, stock up and stock down changes of those NFL guys, and then buys and sells, guys that we're looking to buy, guys that we see stock going up, and guys we're looking to unload before their stock goes down too bad. And we're happy to have Rupert here on the podcast and take his NFL expertise on that as well. And then we're going to be ending the show by previewing some games, players that we're keeping an eye on for next week, guys that we want to watch, and guys that we're going to be games that we're going to be watching to see if they pop off during the next week. But without further ado, I say, guys, let's kick this thing off. Let's dive into the format of the show, and we'll start
Absolutely.
you.
Hey, real quick note, Matt Jackson, on the format for the show. One is we want to stay true to the film room idea. So a lot of this isn't just going to be box score going over stats. This is going to be what we observe watching the games. Yeah. Also, I think it's important to mention we're trying to keep these shows to like 30, 35 minutes. So we're not going to keep you on here for an hour. That's a high value to us as well. So just a couple notes I wanted to make there, but amen to everything you said. I'm really excited. Let's get into the Devy slate from this past weekend.
Absolutely. Good points. Good points. But yeah, let's dive into the Devy slate, and let's start with you, Cooper. When you look at some things that jumped out to you about this last weekend's Devy slate, what are 1 or 2 things that you really noticed about this weekend's games?
Yeah. So first of all, I was really looking for what are these freshmen going to do, because they're the question marks, right? We've been drafting them. We've been excited. We see the 5-star pedigree. Which of these guys are going to get on the field early? Which of these guys is going to look like a star early? And a couple of my favorites really showed out early, which is always fun. So first, I'm going to talk about Dante Moore. Dante Moore looked incredible. It should be his job, right? Like, there's no question in my mind that Ethan Garbers should be on the bench unless Dante Moore gets hurt the rest of the year. He looked confident. He looked poised. He showed the arm talent. He showed the mobility, the intangibles, great decision-making, good accuracy. He just looked phenomenal. Everything that I loved about him as a high school prospect, it's just encouraging to see it day one, week one of his true freshman season. And he just looked like a future pro out there to me. As soon as he came in the game, it just breathed life into the UCLA offense that was stagnant under Garbers. He came in, it was basically a tie game, and by the time the game was over, they had blown the brakes off of Coastal Carolina. So loved what I saw out of Dante Moore.
Was his ability to extend the pocket, right? His ability to make plays out of nothing. He extended the pocket well, threw well off the run. I mean, throwing dimes off his black foot. I mean, throwing off the run. He stood in the pocket. His poise for a freshman quarterback was phenomenal. I mean, he did watching the game, he didn't look like a freshman quarterback. He looked like somebody that'd been in there for a few years.
Mm-hmm. And he had one bad interception. Now, actually, if you watch the post-game interview, Chip Kelly said that it was not his fault. So when you watch the play, it's an all-out blitz from the defense. And Dante makes the right read. He sees the blitz. He sees the guy that's going to be open, and he throws it. And if he'd had time to get the throw off clean, it would have been an easy touchdown. He got hit as he threw, and so that threw off the trajectory of the pass, and it ended up being intercepted. But Chip Kelly said after the game that he called the wrong protection for that blitz, and so he actually said that that interception was on him and not on Dante Moore. But overall, I mean, he looked really good, like we've said. So Dante Moore was a standout for me. Another freshman standout that we have to talk about is Zachariah Branch, man. Zach Branch, he played week 0, so we've actually got 2 games of him already. He came in week 0 and absolutely torched. He had a bunch of receptions. He had a receiving touchdown where he was making guys miss. He looked like he had a ton of juice in his legs. And he had a long kickoff return touchdown. He had a bunch of exciting punt returns. He even took a carry. And so he was heavily involved. He was the day 1 starter. You know, before the game got out of hand, he was taking every snap with the starters. And he was just running laps around these guys. He looked like a pro player playing with college guys. And that's impressive to say that in his very first game as a true freshman, that he just looked like he was in a different class from everybody else. And the only one question that you maybe could have had about Zachariah Branch coming out of that week 1 performance was, okay, well, it was all this gadgety after the catch, around the line of scrimmage stuff. He didn't really catch anything deep down the field. Well, guess what? He comes in the next week, and the very first drive of the game, he catches a long, deep touchdown pass and answers that one question that had
going across the middle, answers that one question you had about him.
Yeah, so I mean, he looks like the complete package. He looks like a superstar, and when it comes to guys like this, there's a lot of hype around them right now. So if you're going to go and buy them, it's going to cost you a pretty penny. You might have to overpay a little bit. But the expression is, an overpay today is an underpay tomorrow. I don't think either of these guys is at peak value yet. I think both of these guys, just as they go through their college careers, as they get closer to being in the NFL, their value is only going to go up. When they end up being first-round picks, inevitably their value is going to keep going up. And so I'm still buying these guys, even though they're expensive right now. And then one other freshman real quick that I'm going to make a note on, Cedric Baxter. Now, he only played a little bit at the beginning of the game, and he got hurt. And rumor is, I don't know if this is confirmed, that it was maybe a broken collarbone, so he's going to miss a chunk of time. But what was encouraging to me is that he was playing every snap with the starters, taking every touch up until that injury happened. It looked like his backfield, and he actually looked really good. He made some nice runs. The box score is not going to pop out at you, and so this may be actually a guy that if you wait a couple weeks, you could buy the dip on, because he's not going to be on the field. There's not going to be all this hype surrounding him. He's going to be injured. And I think that when he comes back, sky's the limit, because he looked really good starting day 1 as a true freshman. So Cedric Baxter is another guy that I wanted to make a quick note on. So those were my freshman standouts.
And the talk there, I mean, talking about Cedric Baxter, I mean, the talk all last season, as soon as Bijan Robinson leaves, it's going to be Jadon Blue's team, right? Well, that's not up until this offseason, up until the start of the season. I mean, it's been Cedric Baxter, and that was confirmed on Saturday. So, yeah, I would absolutely.
Jadon Blue was actually the 3rd running back to get a touch. So
I would 100% buy that dip if you can get it.
Yeah. So Jonathan Brooks came in after Baxter got hurt, and then Blue kind of came in garbage time. So that's a Devy asset that's not looking so good.
Yeah. As far as not freshmen, guys that have been in college football for a little bit, what are some notes that you made this week?
Yeah, so there's a ton of guys that I could talk about here. For the sake of time, I'm just going to talk about one guy, and it's my guy, Evan Stewart. All right. So since this is the first episode, people might not know where I stand on him. I want to make it very clear from the beginning. I'm planting my flag. All right. Evan Stewart is him. Evan Stewart is him. He does everything that you want. The only thing he doesn't have is elite size. He's an incredible route runner. I mean, I was watching the game, and yeah, it was against a low level of competition, but the technique is flawless. He gets open every time. He's consistently earning a high volume of targets. He's got ball skills to go up and get it in traffic. He's incredible after the catch. I mean, literally everything that I'm looking for in a wide receiver. And his production profile by the time he gets to the league is going to be elite. I believe he's a Garrett Wilson type of caliber of player at wide receiver. And I'm wheels up on Evan Stewart. I think he's a superstar. So that was my big.
You just traded him for Garrett Wilson a couple of weeks ago. So
yeah, I mean, come on. You were offering me Garrett stinking Wilson. I'd rather have him than the guy that I had to wait a couple of years on. So, but that doesn't mean I don't love Evan Stewart. I had to sell him to you though because you were overpaying big time.
That's true. Well, when it comes to some of the things that I just pointed out, just moving on, just keep the show rolling. One of the games that I watched was the Washington versus Boise State game. And, man, you want to talk about a dynamic trio. Can we talk about Michael Penix, McMillan, and Rome Odunze for just a second? Penix, of course, throwing for 450 yards, 5 touchdowns. Odunze had the 132 and 1 touchdown. McMillan had 95 yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, what a dynamic trio these Washington guys are. I mean, you look at it, I mean, Penix looked poised in the pocket. I mean, the ball just zips out of his hand when you watch him play. I mean, he looks like he's
arm talent for days on that guy.
He looks like he's effortlessly throwing the ball, and the ball just zips 40, 50, 60 yards down the field. I mean, they had several big plays like that just on Saturday. I mean, McMillan is definitely the route runner in this offense. He gets out of his breaks clean. I mean, he had several slants where he caught touchdown passes. He had 2 touchdown passes. He should have had a third one. He didn't. He ended up getting tackled at the 1-yard line. He ended up running for another touchdown pass. But, I mean, he did it. He did it all. Odunze was the receiver that just he's a savvy route runner, right? He knows how to sit down in the zone. He knows how to find the soft spots and coverages. I mean, this offense looks like it's going to be high-flying this year. I mean, Michael Penix is making a case for Heisman this year. I mean, his stock is something that is up. I mean, guys, I mean, he's got to be shooting up draft boards right now. I mean, Michael Penix looks like he might be the real deal.
Yeah, I mean, I think all of these guys were expected to go pro last year, and they all came back. And so they're going to dominate college this year, and they should. And they obviously got off to a hot start this week. The analytics guys are not going to love these 3 because they're late declares and year 1 zeros and all the things, right? Late breakout. But I agree with you. These guys on tape, they look great. Odunze is 6'3", over 200 pounds. He's got all the traits that you're looking for in an alpha wide receiver at the next level. So I love all 3 of these guys. And Odunze is probably my favorite, but they're great Devy assets to have right now.
For sure. Moving on. I mean, we can't talk about college football without talking about Colorado, right? I mean, the game of transfer schools. I mean, both of these schools lost a ton of guys in the transfer portal. They were both schools that were boasting the highest amount of new players on their roster. And guys, I don't know if you heard the post-game interview, but Deion Sanders keeps receipts. And boy, did he show it after this game. Shadir Sanders looked incredible. I mean, he showed great arm talent, poise in the pocket, showed a great command of the offense. He just always seemed to know where to put the ball. He seemed to be smart with the football. Showed big play potential. Seemed to be able to push the ball downfield. 510 yards, 4 touchdowns. I mean, absolutely torched this TCU team that was just in the national championship last year. Dylan Edwards goes off for 135 receiving yards on 5 catches for 3 touchdowns. But guys, I don't think he's a real Devy asset. I mean, this guy is so small. He's 5'9", 170 pounds. I think people are forgetting that Alton McCaskill is still on this football team. Once he comes back, he's going to take over those spots. I mean, I don't see Dylan Edwards being a guy that I want to own right now, just from sheer size alone. I think he's going to be more of a scat back. I don't know what you guys think about that, but he's not somebody that I'm too terribly interested in. But the only other thing that I want to talk about, guys, Travis Hunter, regardless of what you may think of this Colorado team, Travis Hunter is him. 11 catches for 119 yards and an interception on the other end. I mean, he played over 100 snaps on Saturday. As good as he is, I don't think 100 snaps is sustainable. I think he's going to have to pick a side. I don't think he's going to be able to play both offense and defense at the same time. But, man, this Colorado team is going to be exciting to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. They looked electric. Lots of talent. Shadir Sanders definitely I mean, the big question that I guess a lot of people had was, can it translate from the level of competition he was playing at to now the college level and eventually to the NFL level? He certainly passed this first test with flying colors, and his stock is way up. So I'm not ready to anoint him as like, I've heard some people talk about like he's the QB3 of the class, or
no, I'm not there yet.
Whatever. I'm not there yet, but I think he's got a real shot if he continues playing this way to put himself in the first round conversation. And as far as Travis Hunter, my main concern really, he's incredibly talented. He is going to be a high pick in the NFL draft. The question is he going to be picked to play defense or offense or both? It's kind of hard to imagine him playing both sides of the ball in the NFL. Nobody does that anymore. And so that's the risk. You invest in him as a Devy asset, and that, what if he just ends up
taking the risk of him playing cornerback?
Yeah, he plays cornerback at the next level. So, but the talent is completely undeniable. So, sure. Yeah, loved watching that game. That was game of the year, maybe already week one. It was an instant classic.
Yeah. Well, moving on to stock up and stock down guys for just a second. Matt, Cooper, why don't you just give me one guy that you have as a stock up guy after this week, and then one guy that you have as a stock down guy?
Yeah, so the stock up guy, I'm going to go with Keon Coleman. This was a dude that was barely being drafted in Devy leagues this summer, and he comes in week one and immediately just establishes himself as a potential first-round draft pick. I mean, he's 6'4", over 200 pounds, incredible ball skills on display. He puts on three touchdowns against an SEC defense on national TV. He was running relatively crisp routes. I think definitely still room for development there as a route runner. But the ball skills, the yards after catch, the way he was moving for a guy that size, his stock is way, way, way up. And then a stock down is TreVeyon Henderson. Now, I've been a huge TreVeyon Henderson truther for a while. I said, you know what, last year it was mostly just due to injury, and he's going to be back to the guy that we saw as a freshman. He was a monster as a freshman, looked like a complete bell cow running back. And so he's been my Devy RB1. But now coming in after a full offseason, and he still doesn't look as explosive as he should, and he's still ceding all these touches. It's a three-way committee, and I'm concerned. I'm concerned big time that
I've said it for a season now. I think TreVeyon Henderson is the guy that needs a scheme blocking, zone read type of offense. If he doesn't have that in the NFL, I don't think he's going to succeed. I don't think he's the type of guy that we all drafted him in after his freshman season. I'm right there with you.
Yeah, so he's stocked down for me, somebody that I'm concerned about. I'm going to be keeping an eye on. I'm not saying go sell him for peanuts, but yeah, I'm a little worried. So he's still a top 5 Devy running back easily, and it could be that he easily bounces back next week, and I look like an idiot for even being worried about it. So my panic meter, it's not like up here. It's maybe a 4 or 5, but we're
monitoring the situation.
It's for sure. Yeah. What about you, man? What's a stock up and stock down for you?
Yeah, for stock up, talking about the same team, Ohio State. I know we don't like to talk about the Devy tight end a lot, but Cade Stover was somebody that really impressed me as I was watching that Ohio State game. I mean, 5 catches for 98 yards. Did a really good job of finding the seam over the middle of the field, working his way past defenders. Showed impressive route running, soft hands. Was quickly becoming, for as much as me and you have texted back and forth hating on what Kyle McCord was doing for this team last week. I mean, he's one of Kyle McCord's favorite targets, and I can see him being a guy that catches, 40, 50 passes this year. And, I mean, you never know what NFL teams are looking for. Guys that we never know at the tight end position are getting drafted in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th round all the time. He's a guy that I'm monitoring as somebody that could be an early, maybe day 2 NFL draft pick that could make a roster, make an impact on your NFL roster. And as far as stock down guy, I mean, let's talk about Cade Klubnik for a second. I mean, they just got routed by Duke last night. Cade Klubnik looked
awful.
Looked awful. I mean, didn't have a good command of that offense. They couldn't move the ball down the field. They kept turning the ball over. I mean, it just was a pitiful showing.
His accuracy was all over the place. Yeah. He threw multiple turnover-worthy passes. I mean, probably only a few of them actually were caught, but he could have actually thrown 6 or 7 interceptions if the defense had just
For as much as this team was getting touted that Kane Klubnik was going to be the savior of this team, now that he's gotten a full offseason to work, he's the leader. He did not look like a guy that I want anything to do with this season.
Yeah, I mean, you just got to hope that it was a down week and he'll bounce back, but he did not look like an NFL quarterback in week 1, that's for sure.
Absolutely not.
Losing to Duke is always a big red flag.
Hey, Duke's actually okay this year. They're
gotten better,
probably the best football program they've had in a long time.
So moving on, I've told you guys we're going to move forward. We're not just a college show. We are an NFL show as well. I want to talk a little bit about the NFL season. It's starting here on Thursday. We're going to be, not that I think it's going to be a great game. It's the Lions and the Chiefs, but it's still going to be a game, right? It's NFL football. It's back. What are one or two players that you guys are maybe expecting to make a big jump this season? I'm going to start it off with you, Rupert. One or two guys that you're buying this season that you're expecting to make a jump this season.
Yeah, probably like the guy I bought the most this offseason is Jordan Love. I really loved what I saw out of his game against Philly last year. I just saw a lot of poise, anticipation, some of those things that, you can't always teach a player. I saw accuracy, and then everything I've heard out of camp, everything that I've seen in the preseason is just back that up and just solidified my views on him. So I've been buying Jordan Love everywhere I can this offseason. So he's been one of my biggest buys. Another guy I've been trying to buy as much as I can is DJ Moore. Poor guy's been wide receiver 14 pretty much every year. It seems like he's always on the cusp of becoming a wide receiver 1 for fantasy and just never can get quite there. But when you look at the quarterbacks he's played with Kyle Allen, Will Grier, Teddy Bridgewater, PJ Walker, Taylor Heineke, Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold. The dude has had nothing but, journeyman quarterbacks, horrible teams around him pretty much in Carolina. He's on a kind of iffy offensive scheme there in Chicago, but everything we hear is his rapport with Justin Fields is fantastic.
So
whatever you think of Justin Fields, he's way better than any other quarterback he's been playing with.
Yeah.
I'm really all in on the DJ Moore train. I don't think his, ceiling is top 5 wide receiver, but I think he can, crack top 10 this year.
All right, Cooper, what about you? Give me one or two players you're anticipating to make a jump this year.
I'll give you 2. Deontay Johnson is a huge buy for me. I think he's an incredible route runner. He's an underrated player. He does not get enough credit. He is always open. He always earns a high volume of targets. He's been top 10 in the NFL in targets for 3 straight seasons now. And last year there was obviously a huge dip transitioning from Ben Roethlisberger to a combination of Mitch Trubisky and Kenny Pickett. So that's rough, but there's a lot of signs pointing towards the Steelers being improved this year. They really revamped that offensive line. Kenny Pickett looked improved, at least in the preseason. And frankly, even if nothing changed, positive regression is in the cards because you don't get 130 plus targets and 0 touchdowns. It just doesn't happen. It's so fluky. And so Deontay Johnson, to me, he's priced as a wide receiver 3, and he's easily a wide receiver 2. I think a high-end wide receiver 2. So he's an easy buy for me in Dynasty. And J.K. Dobbins, I think this one is it's riskier because, we're a couple years into his NFL career. He really has not done much. He's shown nothing as a pass catcher, and he really hasn't gotten any cheaper. Even in spite of all that, he's still RB15. So it's a gamble on talent, but it's a talent that I love. He's 2 years removed from the ACL. I think he's finally going to look like himself this year. And that offense as a whole, I think when they got rid of archaic Greg Roman and brought in an actual NFL offensive coordinator, that's only going to help everybody. And so I'm optimistic. I saw the passing skill set in college. I think he can get 4 to 5 catches a game in this new offense. And if he does that on top of his ability as a pure runner, sky's the limit. So I'm really buying into J.K. Dobbins, and He's not cheap, but I think he could perform. I think he could be a top 5 running back this year, which at RB15 price tag and at his age, that's upside that I'm buying into.
Especially when the running
he's
back
a big
position
buy if you're a contender this year, I feel like.
Especially when the running back position is so scarce. I mean,
there's not that many guys that you feel good about that are young. Like, most of the young guys have pretty major question marks, and then a lot of the guys that you feel great about their production, they're really old. And so J.K. Dobbins could be one of these guys, few guys that's really young and really good. Exactly. So I'm buying in.
I'm going to throw one more out there that I've been buying everywhere is Calvin Ridley. I know he's coming off that suspension. I know we've never really seen a full season from him in a while, but Trevor Lawrence took that big step last year. It's a risk, but Calvin Ridley, I mean, everything that I've seen out of camp, he looks explosive. He looks smooth in and out of his breaks. I mean, he looks like somebody that's going to explode this year. And for the price that you can get him at, I mean, he's going in round 8, 9, 10, around that range. I mean, I'm taking that cost all day and twice on Sunday.
Yeah, absolutely. I think especially in redraft. I mean, he's a little on the older side because he missed so many years with the off the field stuff. But from a talent perspective, I totally agree with you. I'd feel great about having him as my wide receiver 1 on my fantasy team, and you can get him as your wide receiver 2 or 3. So
sure. Well, guys, before we get out of here, I want to get a Super Bowl prediction from each of you before the season starts on Sunday or on Thursday. So, Rupert, let's start with you. Give me your Super Bowl prediction for this year.
I've been all aboard the Bengals bandwagon for Super Bowl this year. I think they finally get over the hump. I've been torn on who's going to make it on the NFC side. I've been going back and forth all day on it. And I'm going with 49ers. I feel like their roster is just too loaded. I feel like Brock Purdy's another guy that I've been buying all offseason. And he really seems locked in and recovered from offseason surgery. So I feel like he's going to be, Jimmy G plus for them. And then with that defense they got and the skill weapons they got everywhere, I feel like that's just too much talent. I almost went with Seattle, though, because I really love what they did in the draft.
Wow.
With Witherspoon, as well as JSN in the first round was just killer for them. So I feel like they're going to be very dangerous.
Be bold. Say Seattle.
I was so close.
Hey, Brock Purdy in the Super Bowl is bold. That is bold. I'm going to go – this is going to be a lot less bold. I'm going to go with the Eagles beating the Bills. So I'm going to say that Josh Allen finally gets over the Mahomes-Burrow hump and gets to the Super Bowl, but the Eagles are just too much in terms of their whole team talent. I think they've got arguably the best defense in the NFL. They've got arguably the best wide receiver room in the NFL. So they've got a couple of really solid running backs. And then obviously Jalen Hurts emerged as a superstar last year to lead that offense. They've got a great tight end. It's a very, very complete football team. And honestly, like last year, if it wasn't for Patrick Mahomes just being Patrick Mahomes, they would have won a Super Bowl. So I'll say that the Eagles get back to the big game. They get it done this time. They beat Josh Allen.
So I think you got one of those teams right. Obviously, I'm a bit of a homer, but I'm going to throw my Eagles in there.
I forgot you're an Eagles fan. All right.
I'm going to throw my Eagles in there. I think we beat the Bengals in the Super Bowl this year. I think the Bengals make it again, and the Eagles take them down in the Super Bowl. So that's my prediction. But we'll see.
So we're all putting Mahomes out of the Super Bowl this year.
Yeah, we all have Mahomes out of it. So we'll see.
That's just because we're trying to be spicy. Let's be honest. If I really had to put a bet down, I'd bet on Patrick Mahomes. Come on.
The new Tom Brady. Well, guys, it was fun. I enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to more podcast episodes with you guys. I'm looking forward to having this thing officially rolling now. Glad you guys were here. Hope you guys enjoyed it. And all those who checked us out here live.
Sunday nights is when we're going to be streaming moving forward. So this kind of intro show was Tuesday, but every Sunday night, 7:30 Eastern, you can find us on here.
For sure. Check us out on the YouTube page. That's the Devy to Dynasty Film Room. We'll be on the Apple Podcast as well as Spotify as soon as I get this uploaded. Check us out on all those major podcasts. Make sure to leave a rate and review. Love to hear you guys' comments on the first episode. Please be kind. But yeah, I'd love to hear you guys' first comments. But other than that, we will catch you guys next Sunday at 7:30. We had a good time, and we will see you next time.
See you guys.